From Jackson, Tennessee, it's Red Hot and Country, the podcast for those of you who love classic traditional country music. Cowboy Anton along with you today. Several years ago, I used to host my radio show Music City USA on WRVU Nashville, 91.1 FM. That was a long, long time ago, it looks like. And now, on my YouTube channel, Anton GF, we're beginning a new series of podcasts. We're going to be talking a little bit with some of the most traditional sounding new artists in country music. And of course, we're going to be talking as well about, and maybe to, some of the old stars of country music. My name is Cowboy Anton, and I'm happy to be here with you. And about 10 years ago, almost to the day, this man was on Music City USA on WRVU. And 10 years later, here he is again. Let me introduce to you a man who sings country music straight from the heart, and he sings in the classic way. He had shared stages with lots of people: Ray Price, Leona Williams, Jimmy C. Newman. On his new album, there's some really interesting duets there with the likes of Johnny Rodriguez, Rhonda Vincent. The album is called The Cowboy Way. I'm going to be talking about the Cowboy Way and about the way that he understands country music. He is in Nashville right now, and he's joining us via Facebook. My good friend Bobby Marquez. Hello, Bobby. How are you doing?
Anton, how you doing? It's been so long, hasn't it?
It's been entirely too long. It's a pleasure to receive you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
On Red Hot and Country, we're going to be talking about country music. This is the podcast for people who enjoy classic country music, also maybe a little bit of rockabilly and western swing, maybe even a little bit of rhythm and blues. And the reason why it's called Red Hot and Country is that way back in the day, in the 1950s, the great DJ Dewey Phillips had a show called Red Hot and Blue. And that was a very important show that introduced great music to audiences in Memphis, the likes of Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis, and of course Elvis Presley, and all that great black and white music from those years was on Dewey's fantastic show Red Hot and Blue. And so as a tribute to him, I decided to call this series of broadcasts, a series of podcasts, I should say, Red Hot and Country. And Bobby, it is really a pleasure to have you here. Let's talk a little bit about your career. Let's talk a little bit about that new album that you just put out not too long ago. You were born in Freer, Texas. What was it like? Where was that town, and what was it like growing up down in Texas way?
Yeah, I grew up in a little town called Freer, Texas, which is south of San Antonio, about a couple hours south of San Antonio. And there really wasn't much down there. It was pretty much a lot of cactus, and there's a lot of rattlesnakes down there. A lot of people go deer hunting down there, and it was a small little town. We had 3,000 people. But it was a close knit community. We were all really close growing up. Everybody, and I had a great time growing up. It taught me a lot, about life growing up in the little town, and it just made me grow into a whole lot better person. Being from a small little town that you don't take anything for granted. You work what you get, and you earn your way. You earn your way. And but no, like I said, I grew up in that small little town, and I played all through sports. I did everything. In my high school days, playing sports, football, baseball, and but I got into playing the guitar when I was probably about 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. I had a cousin, Anton, that he had the small little Martin Marquez guitar. If you remember the small little where you could buy them at Sears,
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, and anyway, my cousin and by this time I had never picked up a guitar in my life, but I always sang all the songs on the radio. And I went to my cousin's house, and we were just messing around playing football and everything. And we went into the house, and he said, "Yeah, I've got this little guitar. I can't play it. I'm just so frustrated. I'm just not going to play it anymore. I'm going to throw it away." And I was like, "Why are you going to throw it away? You just bought it. It's brand new." He goes, "I don't like it anymore. I don't want to play it." So he got that little guitar, Anton, and he threw it in the trash. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Why are you throwing it in the trash?" And I said, his name was Mark. And I said, "Mark," I said, "it's a brand new guitar." I said, "If you're not going to play it, I said, "Can I take it?" He said, "Sure, I don't care." So I took that guitar and I took it home, and I just started playing got a chord book and started playing chords and singing to every song on the radio. and and at that point, it changed my life forever. It changed my life forever because it got me into music and got me singing, and from a little boy, 3,000 people, little town, and to Nashville.
So, music became an important part of your life from then on, and I was wondering what were the earliest musical memories that you have? What kind of musicians or singers did you hear on the radio that interested you?
Oh my gosh! I mean, my dad was an avid traditional country music fan. I mean, he had everybody from Ernest Tubb to Ray Price to Waylon Jennings to Merle Haggard to Loretta Lynn to Kitty Wells. I mean, just to everybody. And but the one person that stood out to me was the great Ernest Tubb and the great Ray Price. Those two people were my heroes growing up. And my dad played their records on the jukebox. I mean, almost every day I could think of. I mean, I could probably go on, Anton. I probably have every Ernest Tubb and every Ray Price song memorized.
Well, that's a good thing to have. I can tell you that. But you said that music took you from a small town in Texas to Nashville, Tennessee, which is where country music is at, or at least everyone associates country music with Nashville. And I have the old notes from that interview that we did back in 2009, and it said there that you had been in Nashville back then for about 10 years. So you've been in Nashville now for about 20.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I
mean, I got here in November of '99 is when I got here, and I'm almost. I mean, for almost as long as I lived in Texas, I've lived here in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. As a matter of fact, I wrote a song a few years ago that I might need to put it on my next record. It's a song called Tennessee Texan, and it just talks about growing up in Texas and moving up here to Tennessee and being a Tennessee Texan.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I grew up in Europe, and that's where I discovered country music. And even though I wasn't born in a small Texas town, I was born in a big city in the northwest of Spain. And back there, listening to pretty much the same kind of people you were talking about, like Ernest Tubb and Ray Price. They were somehow speaking to me in a way that other musicians weren't. Even back before I could completely understand the English language. And so, it is in many ways incredible the power that music can have in that way and how much it can teach you. But as you moved from Texas to Nashville, how different did you find the country music capital of the world?
It was a shock when I got here because I was so used to when I was playing out in Texas, playing the dance halls and festivals out there and different things, different venues out there, that I had to get used to it because nobody danced, or they still don't. Hardly anybody dances here in Nashville, and it was more of they would sit there and watch you play and watch you sing,
Mm-hmm.
And in Texas, I was just so used to for everybody just two-stepping, when they come out to watch you sing, and you play 3 or 4 hours worth of music, and everybody's just dancing, and you know that you were doing your job as long as everybody was still dancing on the dance floor. So it took me about 3 or 4 years to get used to it, to be able to sit down in front of a crowd like that where they're just listening to you only and they're not dancing. It was a huge shock to me. It really was, and it took me a lot of getting used to.
It's dance music after all. I don't think old Bob Wills understood music for anything other than something that invited you to dance. Yeah,
and the one thing that Nashville taught me. From Texas is that, of course, like I said, everybody was dancing in Texas, but here in Nashville, when people are watching you, it helped me to be able to put on a show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had to put on a show to get the crowd going, and you can't just stand up there singing and nobody's, paying attention, but listening and dancing to the music. These people are actually here to watch you and watch you only. And so all eyes are set on you on the stage. And, so it made me learn how to put on a show and converse with the crowd, because that was the one thing that I was missing when I moved from Texas. I didn't have that conversion with the crowd. It was just like, oh, well, if they're dancing, they like your music. And over here, it made you had to converse with the crowd to be able to put on a show, and that was the difference. And that's what made me learn up here in Nashville. From day one, is how to learn how to converse with the crowd and put on a show.
beyond that, Bobby, how difficult was it in those early days and those early years for you to get into the country music business?
You know, I really got lucky, Anton, because I had a cousin that worked in the industry, and he ended up managing me when I was still in Texas. So what I was doing, I was coming back and forth, flying back and forth from Nashville. This was when the airline, when Southwest Airlines was cheap. Let's just put it that way, where I could get $100 round trip. Now it's not that way, but I was able to for $100 I could go back and forth and come to Nashville, and I would do all these routers rounds and everything. Well, I had a manager that was a cousin of mine that was in the business, and he started managing me, and I had gotten a showcase over at the Bluebird Cafe, and this was in '98, so I ended up taking my band. A few of my band members came up here, and we did a show up there at the Bluebird. And there was a guy from Arista Records there that really liked my music, and ended up signing me to the label. And so I didn't have that thing where I had to move up here, and all of a sudden, I was trying to break in the industry. It happened pretty quick for me. And by the time you knew it, I was already in the studio recording an album with the great Jerry Crutchfield. And and so everything was happening so fast, and you're young and you don't really get to soak it in. You're thinking, you're going, wow, this is the way it works, and this is how it happens. This is pretty easy, And we'll come to know, after all these years, when Arista didn't put my record out and they ended up dropping me from the label, that it's not that easy. It's really not that easy. And after all that had happened, I had worked my way up, and you got to start all over again. It's basically you're having to start all over again. And in Nashville, it's one of those things too, Anton, where when you get a record deal and you're dropped, it's almost like nobody wants to deal with you anymore. It's one of those kind of things, and you really have to get yourself all back into the music business and get that trust of everybody back again, and making them believe that, hey, you still got some good music, and play my stuff, and this is good stuff. And so it took me a long time to get myself back up and going again. But yeah, it's a tough business. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be, for sure.
And I bet things are different now with the internet and everything coming into play. But I do remember back in 2009, from your earlier album, one song that you recorded for that album that I used to play on Music City USA. She's not from Texas. She's from heaven. An easy swinging Western swing number that I really enjoyed. It got me to thinking about the fact that the kind of country music that you play, with all that Texas influence and all that classic sound to it, in a Nashville that has changed its face so much in the last several decades, or at least the last several years, how difficult is it to deal with the fact that the kind of country music that you play is sometimes seen as a thing of the past?
It's very difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's very difficult, because, like I said, there's not very many, big time radio stations. Let's put it that way, big time radio stations that are playing any of our music anymore. But thank God for people like you and some of these other radio stations that don't have to deal with the corporate stuff. They're able to play the traditional country music, and they're the ones that are keeping the traditional music alive for all of us independent artists that are still out there trying to make a living. And that's a one thing that we can hang our hat on, is those folks like that. And there's still a lot of fans out there. I mean, when I go out and I'm touring, Anton, there's a lot of traditional country music fans out there. It's just not, the music's just not getting out there enough, to these people. Because of what's going on with the industry now, with all the change and everything, with the new music and everything else. And of course, music has to change. I mean, it has to evolve, and that's just the way of the land. It's got to evolve, and you got the younger ones coming up, but it doesn't mean that people like us can't scratch out a living doing it. But it's like I said, it's folks like you and all the other smaller radio stations and internet radio stations that are keeping this going and helping us, keeping traditional country music alive. Like I said, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't have an outlet, and people wouldn't be able to listen to our stuff out there. So I thank you guys for that.
Well, the truth is, I've always had this view about the fact that music does change, and of course, the kind of country music that was played on the Opry in the 1920s and the Western String of Bob Wills and the honky tonk of later on is not necessarily the same as that Nashville sound that began in the 50s after rock and roll hit. So it has changed over the years quite a bit, and I agree with that. But it worries me when it changes so much that it becomes a kind of music that has changed beyond recognition. And that's what I really appreciate about artists like you. And when I had the radio show in Nashville, those are the kinds of artists that I wanted to push because they were not being pushed and they really stayed true to the roots of country music. So I'm the one that has to thank you for that, man.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I mean, like I said, it is tough. It's tough to stay out there. And the one thing I do hate is like I said, I grew up in Texas and there's some people that are in Texas that don't like the Nashville scene and everything else, and and they get into the thing about wanting to bash Nashville and stuff. But if you really think about it, and it's like I try to tell everybody, there is good country music here in Nashville alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can go down to Broadway and you can go hear some of these bands and they're playing great traditional country music. You can go to the Nashville Palace. You can go pretty much anywhere. If you get out, you can go hear it's just that this music is not getting heard through the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only difference, And a lot of people don't understand that. But I always tell people, hey, you come to Nashville, you're going to find some great traditional country music. Any honky tonk you go down here, any venues you come down here, it's here. It's just not getting heard. That's the issue there,
And then the difficulty comes with trying to come out of those venues and try to take your music elsewhere, which becomes really difficult. And then you just get into this rut of always playing the same places and for the same people and for tips and that sort of
right
thing. And that
right.
makes it difficult for your career, I suppose. Now, I've never even held a guitar in my life, but and I can't play an instrument or sing to save my life, but I know what I like when I hear it. And unfortunately, none of that is being played on mainstream country radio these days, and that to me is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Bobby Marquez along with us today here on Red Hot and Country. My name is Cowboy Anton, talking to you from Jackson, Tennessee, and Bobby Marquez is in Nashville, just about less than 2 hours away down the road, down 40 East. And your new album, let's talk a little bit about your new album, which came out not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken. It's called The Cowboy Way. Well, first of all, how did that project come about, Bobby?
It was pretty much by the grace of God that this album came about. Because, like I said, it had almost been 10 years since I had an album released, and I just didn't have the right songs. I didn't have the right everything to put this new album together. And my wife, her father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a couple of years ago, and he was failing pretty fast, and we knew he was going to be gone pretty soon. And my wife came to me and she said, Bobby, she said, it would really, really make me happy if you were to write a song about my dad. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be hard because, I know her dad and I knew her dad very, very well, but it's one of those things where it's a personal thing and it's really hard to get the emotions out. So I had to go to her to give me some more, stuff about her dad and what he did growing up, and stuff like that. And so she kind of helped me co-write it. Actually, she helped me co-write the song. But I was riding through Nashville, downtown Nashville one day, and this melody came in my head. And I was like, this sounds pretty neat. So I kept that melody. And when I got together with my wife, she was giving me all these ideas, and I started writing down all these ideas, and all of a sudden the song just kind of flowed out. And it was about her dad being a cowboy, and it's all about how doing the right thing, and how a handshake meant something back then, when in today's world, you've got so much where people are trying to cheat each other. People, there's no integrity anymore, and that's what this song talks about. It talks about having integrity and how the cowboy back then, was held in high respect because of that. And that's what this song is about. It's about, that's why I called it The Cowboy Way. But it's actually my first cowboy song that I ever wrote, and it just came out that way. I had never written a cowboy song in my entire life. Everything was always traditional. You know, it was never. This song was never even meant to be a cowboy song. It just came out that way. It was a gift from God, and I'm so proud of it. You know, it's even now. I mean, when we released the album, it's the number one song out there that people are buying on YouTube and iTunes, and people just love the song, and it's just a great healer, you know.
Well, first of all, you know, your wife was one of the sweetest people that I met when I was living in Nashville in the radio business, and you know, Jennifer Herron, who you know, for the longest time worked on WSM, and I would see her every Saturday night, just about at the Ernest Tubb Midnight Jamboree, because I was one of those that was always going to the Midnight Jamboree, and yeah, I just I'm interested to hear the story behind that song, because it did sound to me like a very special song, talking about the title track, The Cowboy Way. I didn't know, obviously, anything about this, but it does sound like a song that has a certain something to it.
Yeah, yeah, and if you go on the album and you look on the backside of the album, that's her dad on a bull. He used to be a bull rider back in the day when he was younger, and that's him on my album on the backside. I did it in memory of him, and because people always ask me, "Well, that's not you in the back. Who is it riding the bull?" That's my father-in-law.
I must say that's a tough task, writing a song about your father-in-law.
It really was, and you know, and it's hard to sing sometimes. Those kind of songs, just like my last album, I had the song called "That's Life" that I wrote about my grandmother. Those songs are very, very hard to sing live, because they're very emotional and they mean a lot to you, and it's very, very hard to sing live. But I'm just so thankful for that song, because that's the song that kind of started everything to put this album together. And I just started thinking, I got more songs, and all of a sudden when I got these other songs, and Trapped by Your Memory, the one that I got on there, and That's What Loving You Means, those two songs there, those were on the project that I recorded for Arista with Jerry Crutchfield. And I said, you know, I'm going to dig back deep into some of these other songs. And I pulled those two songs out because I thought they would fit the album really, really well. And I went into the studio and recorded those two songs. But those were actually on my early projects from Arista that I'd always wanted to, you know, put on the album and get it released. So those two songs made it on the album. And of course, I got another song on there that I did with the great Rhonda Vincent, which, you know, we just got a Grammy nomination for. And that was a song that I wrote 10 years ago. And it was a song that I pitched to Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, and they had it for a long time, over a year, and they ended up not doing anything with it. And when I was putting this album together, I said, I got to do a duet with somebody besides Johnny Rodriguez. You know, I've always wanted to do it with a female. And of course, Jennifer, my wife, had said, you ought to try Rhonda Vincent. And I said, she's not going to do it. I said, she's too busy, you know, and there's just no way she'll do it with me. And Jennifer said, well, no, you know, here's her number, give her a call. And Jennifer had her number, so I called her and got a hold of her. And she said, well, I'd love to do it. If I like the song, yeah, definitely, I'd love to do it with you. And she said, send me a copy of it. And so I sent the rough copy to her, and she goes, wow, this is a great song. She said, count me in. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I'm going to be singing a duet with the great Rhonda Vincent.
That was called For a While on the album The Cowboy Way by Bobby Marquez. You know, I think it was old Ernest Tubb that said in a song that there's a little bit of everything in Texas, didn't he? And there's also a little bit of everything on this album of yours, just like, and even to a greater extent than on the earlier album, Bobby Marquez, that you put out about 10 years ago. Let's talk a little bit, since you mentioned the duets. Let's talk a little bit about the duets. You mentioned For a While, a duet with Rhonda Vincent, which was really like a dream come true, you say, to be able to sing with Rhonda. What was it actually like to be in the studio with her? Did you know her from before? You know, how did the dynamics work in the studio? Did you record the song together? You know, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, you know, I had known Rhonda for a long time, and we had always we actually had tried to a couple years before that try to write a song together, but her tour schedule was so tough that she said, well, why don't we text or email each other and try to write that way? And I was like, oh, I don't know, I don't know if that'd be a good idea. And so we just kind of kept blowing that off about writing a song because we could just never get together. And so when this opportunity came up to do the duet with her, I took advantage of it, and it's turned into something great. But yeah, I've known Rhonda for quite a while, and but she wasn't in the studio with me when we did this song. And in all the interviews I do with everybody, I always tell them, I said, she was on tour. She was somewhere, I think around Missouri, I believe, and she only had an hour of her time to go back into her studio over there. She has another studio over there in Missouri, to go in. And we sent all the tracks that we had at the studio down here. We sent them all to her engineer, and she got to sing the song over there. And then they sent her track back over here. And then I had to sing over on some of the parts to sing behind her on some of the background stuff. And when we just put it together, and I was really worried because, you kind of get worried because when you're not there and you don't have that chemistry in the studio together, and you're not there together, you get worried. You're like, gosh, are we going to have this chemistry or not? Or our voices, are they going to mesh? Or is it going to sound funny and weird? And so I was really worried. And but when we got back to tracks and they started putting them together, I was like, wow, our voices actually mesh pretty well. And there was a few things I had to sing over, but just because of key stuff, but after, when the whole product was done and I listened to it, I go, holy smokes, this is a great song. She nailed it. And she made the song. I mean, I did my part, but with her coming in on the second part, she just has that, haunting voice,
And that's why
I couldn't see anybody else doing it. I could only see her singing this song. I still can't see anybody else singing it but her, because she just has that haunting voice, to her for that line when she comes in on the second part of the song, and she just nailed it. I mean, just absolutely nailed it.
And that's why I was asking you, because I had read somewhere or heard somewhere that you were not together in the studio, and it was hard for me to believe, because it did sound like you sounded so good together. It went well together. It was well mixed or something, and it really sounded to me like she was right there with you. Definitely a class act in country music. She's had a long career behind her, and like you say, a haunting voice. That really is the word to properly describe her singing and her style, and how much she has brought to country and to bluegrass music. And another class act, I think, in the history of country music, who from, let's say, a geographical background probably shares a lot more with you, is Mr. Johnny Rodriguez.
Yes.
How did that come about? Were you friends with Johnny and you just asked him over and you try to write a song together? Or obviously not this one, because this was one of the big hits that he had way back in the 70s, Riding My Thumb to Mexico. How did that come about?
Yeah, so back in 2008, I was putting together the Hispanic block for the CMA festival. They had come to me, the CMAs had come to me and asked me to put a CMA show together of some of the Hispanic artists in country music. So I had John Arthur Martinez, Melanie Torres. I had a bunch of them. Little Joe. I had Ruben Ramos. A bunch of them had come out from Texas to be on the show, and they had asked me. They said, you think you can get Johnny Rodriguez? I said, absolutely. I said, I know Johnny. I'll give him a call, see if he wants to come and come down to the CMA festival. My wife had been really good friends with Johnny, and I had known Johnny for a while, but I wasn't actually like really, really close to Johnny at that point. So my wife had called over there and talked to him, and she said, yeah, absolutely. He said, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come and do the show with Bobby or whatever. And so he came up and did the show, and my band backed him and everything, and he just brought the house down. Boy, I tell you what, he's got that charisma, and we did Ride My Thumb to Mexico together as a duet live on stage. Mm-hmm. And I was just sitting there going, holy smokes, this is, as a little kid, you listen to his records on the jukebox, and I'm sitting there going, well, I cannot believe I'm up here on the stage singing with the great Johnny Rodriguez, It's one of those moments you just kind of look and you're just in a daze and you just kind of go, is this happening? And so anyway, so that day when we got done with the show, I told Johnny, I said, since you're here in town for a couple more days, what do you think about us going into the studio and doing something together, doing a duet? He goes, yeah, absolutely. And I said, I've got a couple songs that maybe we could do. And we ended up doing a duet on one of my last songs, but I didn't put it out on my last record, but we did a duet together on Neon Tan. We sang the duet on that. And then I kept thinking, I go, what else can we do, to sing together? He said, how about Riding My Thumb to Mexico? I said, let's do it. So we went into the studio, and we just did it acoustically. We just did it with acoustic guitar. There was no instruments behind it. There was nothing. It was just on acoustic, me and him. And we went in there, and he nailed it in one take, Antoine. He'd sing it in one take. And then I went in there and did my thing. And I had that song sitting there since 2008. I had the masters, and it was sitting there for a very, very long time. And I was actually going to go into the studio and redo my vocals and keep his, but redo mine and put more of the instruments in there, the steel guitar and everything. And everybody in the studio, including the producer and everybody, said, don't do it, Bobby. This is a moment in history. Keep your voice the same way that it was at that time, which I had a whole lot, younger voice than I do now. They said, keep it that way. Don't change anything. We'll just kind of remix it and fix it up a little bit, and just keep it the same. Don't change nothing, because that's history, and you guys had history back then when you sang it. So just keep it that way. I said, okay. So I kept it that way. So the voice that you're hearing me, that was my voice back in 2008.
Well, I'd say you surround yourself with some pretty smart people, because that definitely is the good way to go. And that voice that Johnny Rodriguez has been accompanying me, following me all my life, really, since the very first time I ever heard one of his records. And I was so happy to see his name on your album, because it's not one of those names that you get to hear very often anymore. Definitely not on country radio, unless you own the records yourself. And he was such a fantastic singer. He is such a fantastic artist. And there was a time, Bobby, when Hispanic country music became quite popular. You think about Freddie Fender or Johnny Rodriguez as two prime examples of that. When you were growing up in Texas, did you listen to a lot of music in Spanish, or was that not part of your upbringing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad played. He played a lot of Vicente Fernandez. Was always around the house, and of course, and then we had a lot of Freddie Fender, Johnny Rodriguez, and stuff like that. But my dad, we had the Tejano music was a big thing down there. So he had a lot like Ruben Ayala, a bunch of people like that were in that area, and so we had a lot of regional Mexican music that my dad played, and but it was one of those things where I never really got into it much. I got into more of the traditional country music stuff. I didn't really get into much of the Spanish stuff. But I've always liked to put a little bit of flavor here and there on some songs. Like Neon Tan had a little bit of a Latin flavor. Touch of a Woman had a little bit of a Latin flavor, into it. But I love the Spanish music too. And, I just don't know if you want to hear me singing it. Might not sound good, Anton.
I don't know about that. With your voice, I think anything would sound good. But anyway,
well,
that's Bobby Marquez joining us from Nashville, Tennessee. This is Red Hot Country. My name is Cowboy Anton, coming to you over YouTube. And this is a new series of podcasts that will be available on my YouTube channel, Anton GF, coming up. And I really appreciate having Bobby Marquez here, taking some time off his schedule to chat with us about his new album, The Cowboy Way. Really interesting album that I'm here. I heard that people are listening to it over in Europe. At least some of my friends who live over there who like country music, they mentioned this album, and in fact, that was one of the ways in which I originally heard that it had come out. And then I made it a point to track it down and listening to it myself. Let's talk briefly, before we finish, about some of the songs that really stand out to me. We've mentioned The Cowboy Way, of course, the title track, very emotional song. And then we've also talked a little bit about the duets, For a While with Rhonda Vincent and Riding My Thumb to Mexico. What a great song that is, with Johnny Rodriguez. Now, the song that starts off the album is a classic honky-tonk style number that, was it because you didn't know how to call it any other way, but you just simply called it honky-tonk? What about that song? It's really a good way to open the album. It really gets you in the mood for dancing.
It does. It's just really a fun song. I actually wrote that with Steve Frame. He was one of the guys I wrote the Marlboro Man with.
Mm-hmm.
When we actually wrote that song, when I did write the Marlboro Man, it was during that time. And I had always played that song live here the past 5 years. I've been playing it live, and I've just been seeing the reactions of everybody, and everybody loved the song. And I said, I've got to put that on the album, got to. And I did it. I actually did it live a little bit different. I did it a little bit more. I would just say more Ray Price a little bit, you know,
4/4 shuffle style.
Yeah, a little bit more 4/4 shuffle, and on this one I wanted to do a little bit more honky tonk style, you know, with the guitar in there and more Webb Pierce type thing, you know, a little bit, and kind of mix the two together, you know, the 4/4 shuffle with the Webb Pierce type just a good solid honky tonk feel, and but yeah, I mean the song just talks about, and we thought it would be funny because we were like, there's got to be another way of writing a song like this. And it just talks about a guy that he was always going into a club, the same club all the time, the same honky tonk all the time, and he was always trying to pick up a woman, you know, trying to find the love of his life. And every time he went in there, he got turned down by all these women, you know. But the guy just never learned. He's like, if you keep on going back in there and you're not finding the right woman, why don't you go somewhere else? You know, go somewhere else, you know, to a restaurant or church or something, you know. And but the guy kept going in there, and all he's doing, he's just saying, honky tonk, why are you breaking my heart again? Every time I come in here, you know, I think I find the right girl for me, and all of a sudden she turns me down. And that's what this song is about. You know, it's just a fun song. You know,
so like wind me up in a way. You know, you come back every night. That old
exactly.
that old Fern Young number, huh?
Exactly.
The next one up here that I also really enjoyed is one called "Trapped by Your Memory."
Yes. That song was another song that when I got signed to the Arista record label, that was one of the songs that I recorded for the Arista project, and I always thought it was a great song. And my keyboard player that was back in Texas at the time, before I moved to Nashville, he had started this song off. He was writing this song because he was dating this girl, and she ended up breaking his heart, and they ended up breaking up. And I remember he had this little thing on the keyboard, and he came to me. He said, "Bobby, I've got this melody, but I can't finish writing this song." And I said, "Well, let's get together. Let's write." So me, my keyboard player Weldon Smith, and my bass player John Ragosa had gotten together. All three of us got together to write the song, and we ended up writing. And I was playing it live down in Texas, and people were loving it. And I even had an older demo that I had that some of the stations were playing down there with this song. But when the chance came up for me to do that, I said, I've got to redo this song because I want to do this song a little bit in a different way and a little bit more with some different, how would you say, a little different style, I guess.
Arrangement.
And so, yeah. And so I had more of a creative mind because I've been doing it so long on some of the things I want to do with it. And when we went into the studio and did it, it came out exactly the way I wanted it done. And I absolutely love this song. I think it's a great song. It's got a great feel. It's almost kind of like a love two-stepper type song, you know. And people are really, really taking a liking to it. So I'm really proud of it.
I like it how you then slow down the pace for the Cowboy Way, sort of like the most reflective song, the one that, so to speak, teaches you more about life or makes you think more about life, I guess, which, you know, country music does as well. You know, sometimes people tend to think, oh, country music is just dance music. There's nothing to it. You know, it's all about, you know, mama and cheating and all that stuff. It doesn't make you think. It's not the thinking man's music. Well, I beg to differ about that. And I think when you think of songs like The Cowboy Way and several others, you know, that doesn't hold true. But then after that song, we have one throughout the history of country music. You know, songs about card games have been used quite a bit. You know, from the earliest years. You know, Merle Travis and all those guys, and Tex Williams. You know, and you have a song here called "What's the Deal."
Yeah, this was a song that I was actually. You know, I already had went into the studio recording songs, and I'm like, gosh, we need one more song because, I mean, we were still one song short from having a 10-song album, and there only ended up being 9 on there. But I was thinking, well, I was telling my wife, I can do an 8-song album. And she was like, well, no, I just don't know if people are going to take a liking to it. So you need to write one more. And I'm going, well, but I don't, all the other songs I have, it's just not going to fit this album. She goes, well, let's write it. She goes, do you remember that idea that I gave you called What's the Deal? And I said, yeah, I remember that. She goes, well, why don't you write it? And I was like, okay. So one evening I sat down with my wife, and she was coming up with some different ideas. And I all of a sudden, I don't know what it was, Anton, but all of a sudden I had this melody that just come in my head. I mean, it was just like real quick. Mm-hmm. And so the beginning of the song, when you hear ta-na-na-na, ta-na-na-na, that came up with all that melody, and that was in my head. So I kind of hummed it to her with my guitar, and she said, that's great. She goes, that's going to be fitting perfect what some of the ideas I've got here and the style that we want to look for, because I want to do that little bit of a Western swing honky-tonk mix. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up writing the song, and it's a fun song. Boy, I tell you what, it's a fun song to play live, But everybody goes, Bobby, I don't think I've ever heard of a song that has so many card cliches in it. And I said, yeah. I said, it's really, 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 really a cool way of saying things,
Well, I guess some songs just write themselves, so to speak, and some others, like the Cowboy Way, you need to work a lot more at writing them. I don't want to take too long to talk about absolutely all the songs that are in here. But is there any other that you would like to comment on?
Well, another song that I really, really loved was, of course, That's What Loving You Means. That was one of the songs that I had that I wrote back in the time too with Track by Memory, with the project I recorded at Air. So that was another one, and that song is doing very, very well too. And it's in that, both songs, the Track by Memory and That's What Loving You Means, they're in that neo traditional style that was in the '90s. When you heard. Mm-hmm. When you heard Tracy Lawrence and people like that style was really hot back then, and that was kind of that style of what I came up with, and I wrote these songs with. But another song that I'm really, really proud of is a song called Speak Love, which is the last track on the album.
That's the closing title of the album, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a song that I wrote with the great Karen Staley that I wrote That's Life with. We were thinking about what to write about, and we're like, all of a sudden I was watching the news one day, and I'm thinking about all these shootings and everything in all these schools, and how these kids are having a hard time these days with bullying and everything. She was, let's write something. I said, okay. So she started writing on her end, and then she sent me some of the lyrics, and I listened to it, and I go, wow, this is pretty cool. I think we can do something. So we kind of wrote back and forth through texting, and actually kind of did it, and. She came up with a melody. I came up with some more of the lyrics. She came up with some more melody. I came up with the lyrics. And I said, when we go into the studio, I don't want to record the song with all the musicians. I just wanted acoustic and vocal. Mm-hmm. And I did it with my nylon string acoustic guitar and just my vocal. And then we had a little bit of the fiddle that we had in there that was just kind of playing just a real sad melody in the background. And that's it. That's all we did it with. And boy, I tell you what. That song it's bringing a lot of meaning to a lot of kids, because I get emails and stuff on Facebook every day that song is really healing a lot of people right now. And so that's one thing that I'm really, really proud of. I'm really proud of that song.
I'm glad to hear that, because it definitely is the perfect song to end the album on. It ends the album on a very good tone and a very good note, and I would say also that it has a message that really rings true and speaks to the hearts of many people in this country and abroad, but particularly here in the United States.
Absolutely. Like I said, there's so much bullying and stuff going on, and it just speaks a really good message about spreading love to everybody. Let's all just love each other and get along, and just do things the right way, and that's what this whole album's about, the Cowboy Way. It's about just doing everything the right way.
That's absolutely right, and you can do it through music too.
Absolutely,
traditional country music, that is, in this case. And Bobby Marquez and his new album, The Cowboy Way. As we wind down the conversation, I have a couple more questions for you very quickly. The first one is, Bobby, for somebody that has never heard this album before, tell us or tell the listeners what they will find in this album? We've been talking about it like song by song, but overall, what were you trying to achieve with this album?
The one thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to, and it's like you were talking about earlier, is that this album has a song for everybody. It's going to have a honky tonk song, it's going to have a sad song, it's going to have a good message. So it kind of has a broad variance of everything that I brought to this album, rather than my last album, which was a little bit more country, it was a little bit more honky tonk and western swing type thing. I wanted to bring a message to this album, and I believe that when somebody picked up this album, it's going to have a good message. It's going to be fun at the same time, but it's going to have a great message, to the buyer. And like I said, I couldn't be happier with this album. I'm very, very proud of it. I always tell everybody, Anton, I'm like, because I hate telling people, hey, go buy the record, and this and that. But I really do believe that if somebody does go buy this record, it's going to grow on you. It's one of those albums that's going to grow on you. You might listen to it, the whole thing, one time, and you're going to go, yeah, that was good. But it draws you back to listen to it again, and you go, oh wow, this is really good. And then by the time you get to the third or fourth time, you go, man, I'm hooked on this album. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. I wanted to for it to just kind of be a hooking thing where people just keep listening to it over and over and over and over. And I think I've done that on this album. I think it's one of those types of albums that you just can't stop listening to. You just want to listen to every song over and over again.
Well, we need to tell everybody where to buy the record, though, Bobby. So if anybody is interested in getting the album, where is it available? And also, where could they find more information about Bobby Marquez?
Yeah, you can definitely get it www.bobbymarquez.com. You can go to my website to have that. You can go to iTunes. It's available pretty much on almost any digital outlet all over online. Or you can even go to the Ernest Tubb Record Shop, etrecordshop.com, and order it. Or you can even call the record shop downtown Nashville, and they'll send you a copy as well, too. And we're starting to get it all over Europe through all the Smart Choice outlets. You can go to smartchoicemusic.com if you're in Europe, and you can order it there. So we're starting to get it all through these different outlets. So I'm really happy about that.
And I can't tell you what a special place that Ernest Tubb Record Shop is. I remember living in Nashville for about 6 or 7 years, and at any given moment you could find me there, just rummaging through the records and talking to the people out there. And it really is a Nashville tradition. And I hope it lasts for a long, long, long time.
Absolutely.
Bobby Marquez, and the album is The Cowboy Way. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you listen to it. And let us know what you think under here. You can write any comments that you would like right underneath this recording here on YouTube. And, of course, we'd love to hear from you. And I truly appreciate, Bobby, your time and you're sitting down and listen and answering our call and talking about this album that I recommend to everybody. It's been entirely too long since the last time I talked to you, and I'm glad that we were able to catch up and talk a little bit about your wonderful music. I truly appreciate it, man.
Oh, shoot, I appreciate you having me on, Anton. It's been a long time since we got to sit down and chat for a while, and this has been a great time. I'm so happy to do this, and man, let's keep this traditional music thing going, huh?
And you do the same, and best of luck as you travel up and down the country and you present this album to new audiences that I'm sure will enjoy.
Thank you so much, Anton. I appreciate it.
This has been Red Hot and Country. My name is Cowboy Anton. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you check out the album, The Cowboy Way by Bobby Marquez. And I think you'll be glad you did, that's for sure. And right now, it's just time to say goodbye. Cowboy Anton's saying so long, everybody. Hope to meet you down the road pretty soon. Bye-bye for now.
Panhandle Rag.